Next question is by Prometheus, our very own demigod. What do you guys think about the legality of, can I say this on air? I think I
Yeah,
can say it.
yeah.
Okay, the legality of incest. I personally believe that it should be allowed with the condition that they should not be allowed to procreate. Do you think that the stigma behind this is justified from an evolutionary point of view, or is it just an arbitrary cultural norm? Um, well, I don't think it's a. I mean, evolutionary. It is evolutionary that we're disgusted by it, but that doesn't mean it's justified, because for something to be justified and for something to be evolutionary, these are two separate questions, right? Because if you think something because we have an evolutionary disgust for it that would make it justified, then you're you're going into a very dark territory. Just because something made sense from an evolutionary perspective for our survival, that doesn't mean that it's moral or it should be part of our ethical standards, right? That is, I'm not accusing you of anything, but that's what the Yahtzees, again, I'm using code language here so that it doesn't get misinterpreted here. In fact, many things that we consider moral is the opposite of what is evolutionary in our benefit. So, for example, evolutionary for our survival is the survival of the fittest, right? But in a society, the rules are actually the opposite. We are actually we come up with rules and standards that we look after the weakest, not the fittest. So it's the opposite, right? So don't try to use evolution as a way to come up with moral standards. That one thing. But let me finish answering and then I'll get to you. Okay. Second of all, the legality of it and the morality of it are two separate things, right? Technically, morally, I don't see anything wrong with it. If you're careful not to have a child, unless you, if you're both adults, if you're both consenting adults, and if there's no power dynamics at play. So even, for example, let's say there's incest, but there's a father and a daughter, and they're both adults, but because of the conditioning of the daughter, there's some power play at play. So if you think about it, like in a workplace, you don't allow sexual relationship between a boss and an employer, because if you allow that, there could be power dynamics that you're taking advantage of. That could be the same thing when it comes to a
I'm
father
good.
and a
Don't worry
daughter.
about it. You focus on that.
Yeah.
I'll keep on.
Thank you for removing the book. But here's the thing. I'm not. It doesn't make sense to look at this only from a utilitarian perspective. You have to look at it from a rule utilitarian perspective instead of an act utilitarian perspective. So if you look at it from an act utilitarian perspective, you're like, there's no harm, so why not do it? But a better model is a rule utilitarian perspective, which you look at the consequences of saying something is okay beyond the immediate results of that one specific action, right? So, for example, let's say that you have a rule that you don't pass the red light even if it's safe, okay? Because if you allow such a rule, so like, okay, I'm going to stand behind the red light when there are cars, but when I can see that there's no cars, there's no harm, so you just pass it. So if you allow that rule, you're opening the door to a whole bunch of potential harm, because you're passing a red line. It's just safer to have that red line, even if you could find exceptions. So that's why the concept of rule utilitarianism, right? So when it comes to act utilitarianism, you could find a lot of ridiculous situation. You could be like, in this specific situation, would this be wrong? They're like, okay, well, in that specific situation, that would not be wrong. But it's best for us to still have this rule, because the consequences of allowing this in general could be very bad for society. So it's basically a step between just ultimate act utilitarianism and having principles, or using deontology, right? Or using virtue ethics. It's something in between. So you're still concerned. Your main concern is still harm reduction. So it's utilitarianism, but you're looking at the longer term effects of allowing something. So the problem with incest is that you might come up with examples and be like, okay, yes, in this one specific example, there's no harm, but maybe it's good for us, society as a whole, to make this taboo and also to make it illegal. Because if you allow that, then the benefit, think about what is the benefit. Some people, a very few number of people who wanted to have a sexual relationship and weren't causing any harm, now get to be with each other. But on the other hand, you're opening the door to a lot of abuse that is might not be monitored anymore because you had made something legal. So the consequences of allowing that might be damning. Just in the same way that let's say, for example, you change the rule that crossing the red light is not always illegal. If it's 2 a.m. and you could check that there's no cars, you can pass the red light. Imagine if you introduce that rule. The consequences of that is significant, because now every time somebody passes a red light, you could make it, now that person has an argument. Well, I considered it to be safe. So how come you're telling me that it wasn't safe, but I'm saying it's safe? Now, you could have a lot more accidents just because you're opening a loophole. And was it really that necessary? How much time society is wasting because at 2 a.m. you have to wait behind the red light? Are you really adding that much benefit to society by allowing that, given the potential harm? So I would say that even though I still think it's not immoral, it should still be illegal. Even though it's not immoral for people to commit incest because they could do absolutely no harm, the consequences of allowing it, making it legal, could be so much more than the small potential benefit that you get from allowing it. And that's why I think it should still remain illegal. Does that make sense? You're muted.
Yes, I would go even further than that. The benefits, I wouldn't even see the benefits. But anyway, so Armin, Navabi, and we spoke about this a couple of years ago. There it is, 3 years ago now. It says, just Google that. Should incest be allowed? Armin Navabi versus Har Sultan. If I remember correctly, but I know there's so many nuances, so there could be a bit of a difference in I'm sensing a little bit of a change in Armin Navabi's answer, but again, like, our views evolve and change over time. So this is I also go down the consequentialist route, and it's not a slippery slope fallacy if you can actually demonstrate that it has happened. So if you normalize incest, for example, by the way, let's get some easy ones out of the way very easy. Parents, between parents and children, definitely no power dynamics involved. Again,
adult children, like kids, like children,
adult kids as well, because you open them to grooming their children. Like if you have a daughter or a son from the age of 1 or 2, you've groomed them in a way that they grow up to think that it's okay for them to sleep with their parent. So that would be a very bad society to live in. So that's why. So parent one is gone. Okay, siblings 2 same age. Now they say, they love to give this hypothetical to us. Okay, if they were safe sex and they use protection and they don't intend to make any babies, blah blah blah. Would then, okay, on that individual scale, yes, you can't detect any direct harm from it. But again, there's so many things, there's so many natural taboos that you can remove, but they can end up creating a terrible world around you. So we could have, before you know it, if you've normalized this, okay, brother and sister can sleep with each other, but they're not going to make any babies. Okay, how long before that changes? That's just going to change. By the way, none of this is ever going to happen in the future, because I'll come to that as well. So from consequentialist point of view, that's going to be bad. I remember Armin argued with me. Armin said, no, that's a slippery slope fallacy, that, okay, a generation later, something else would change. I said, no, look at the Muslim world, particularly Pakistan. Everywhere else, cousin marriages are frowned upon. Nobody wants cousins to marry each other. But in Pakistan, it was normalized. Now, Pakistan is number 1 in consanguineous marriages. Is that how you say it? I don't even know why you even attempted that. I should have just said cousin marriages. So Pakistan is number 1 in there. Why? Because they removed that. They said they normalized it. So when you normalize something, it is bound to have a consequence in the real world. So if you normalize this, that's going to happen. Now there's a flaw in this argument. I'll say it. I've known it always, but it just leaves two gay brothers and lesbian sisters with each other. Well, I say, well, let him get on with it. Like, I mean,
two brothers and two sisters. Honestly, I think that is like, I don't know the other forms of I think they should let that be. Gay brothers and gay sisters wanting to have incest.
There's another point in that.
Yeah. So you agree with that? That should be allowed.
But there's another point in that. Whether you allow it or not is irrelevant, because what people do in secret, nobody knows anyway. There are these people, like there's this incest going on all the time in all kinds of countries. In Muslim countries, it happens a lot. In more closed societies, it happens a lot. People don't know it. People do kind of things behind. So the question here is, should the society, should we make laws against it? Should we decriminalize it? So that one, I say, as a society, we cannot allow certain things. We cannot. For example, I'll give you another one. By the way, if you are having trouble, please speak to someone. There are helplines available if you're feeling down. There's always help around you. Call your local number. For example, there's suicide. In so many countries, suicide is not allowed. It's criminal. But you're like, what the hell are you doing with that? But it's a statement that as a state, we don't encourage you to kill yourself. That's what it says. So you can make, as a society, you can make a statement that this is not allowed. We don't endorse that. But people end up doing those things anyway. Have you ever seen that someone didn't kill himself because he thought that, I'm going to go to jail otherwise? Nobody does that. So in using the same line of reasoning, I would say, as a society, we cannot say that it's okay for you to go and do this and this and this. But as long as if it happens in the background, it happens anyway. It happens anyway, but we as a society don't endorse it. And I've given you the reason. For sibling sex, opposite sex, definitely not. Parents, kids, definitely not. Lesbian sisters and gay brothers, well, let them be.
Okay, look at this. I think ChatGPT is broken. I ask it, should sex between two adult sisters be allowed? Okay. ChatGPT says, no, sex between two sisters should not be allowed. Incestuous relationships between family members, including siblings, are generally considered taboo in most cultures and are illegal in many jurisdictions. Incestuous relationship can result in a range of harmful consequences, including genetic abnormalities. Dude, I'd ask you, the question is about two sisters. Two sisters. How could it be? How could it cause a genetic abnormality? Does ChatGPT know that two women cannot have babies?
It gave you a very generic answer. Again, like when you go into siblings or whatever, people straight away, and that shows ChatGPT's bias as well, because it's been designed by humans. It goes straight into brother and sister. That's what it goes straight into.
Including genetic abnormalities in any offspring that may result, as well as emotional and psychological harm to both parties involved. Yeah, because of society. Okay? Because of how big of a taboo is by society, not because it's inherently wrong. Moreover, incestuous relationships can damage family relations and social norms. Yeah, but if social norms, okay, so this is a fault of society, not because of those people. Because social norms are there to make it taboo, these people will suffer. Yeah, but if society was accepting, they wouldn't suffer. Therefore, sex between but I think I accept that, given that it's a taboo and given that you would pay a heavy price for it. Okay, so stay away from it, because if people find out, you're screwed. So maybe in that aspect, like if you want a consequentialist, I would say stay away from it. But not because it's your fault, but it's because society, it doesn't look.
No, but society has a reason.
Society was against. Society finds gay relationships gross as well. So for a long time, so it might have a reason. That doesn't mean it has a good reason.
No, but incest, natural taboo, there's a good reason behind it.
Prometheus is asking, but what about personal liberties then? I mean, personal liberties, it's not absolute. You could be like, I don't want to cross a red light. I want to cross a red light, like, and you can't. And like, well, what about my personal liberties? Like, there's a limitation to personal liberties, right?
Well,
but so we got a super chat. I don't know if it was.
Yeah, if Sunday Scoop is returning, please explain the real reason it finished in the first place. Well,
thank you for the super chat.
Thank you for the super chat, by the way. I don't know. I don't know where you got that. It's returning. I don't think it's coming back. And I think we explained that in our last Sunday scoop. The why we left. I mean, Nuria had other things to do. She's got other things to do, and she's doing other things.
See, look, France allows it. Okay, so Terrell is saying the power dynamic point that I made about incest is probably why France allows incest between adult siblings, but not parent and adult child. So yes, you see, I mean, France is not breaking apart, and they allow it, so it's fine, I guess. Yeah. To have your questions answered on the next live stream, become my patron today. You can do so with as little as $1 a month. Link in the description below.